Every Pride Month, I notice how conservatives, but also a lot of moderates and just normal people always wonder, when did this movement get so crazy? Because for the longest time, they just wanted to get married, but now they're pushing it on your children, dominating the sports and controlling the entire culture. And many people will say things like, well, I was fine with them getting married and having equal rights, but why do they have to push it on my children? And most Americans seem to make a distinction between the moderate gay rights movement of the past and the radical LGBT of today. And they will give this fence-riding take where they say, well, the stuff in the past was fine, but now the LGBT has gone too far. Well, in this video, I am going to make an argument that most of society is not ready for, but if you oppose the genital mutilation of your children, then listen up carefully. And the argument is that there is actually no distinction between the sexual revolution of yesterday and the sexual revolution of today. They are the same movement with the same goals, and this movement was always designed, keep that in mind, designed to descend into radicalism. Many are not ready to accept that because they have been conditioned to think that the original LGBT was some type of noble civil rights movement that just went too far with their power, and now things are getting crazy. But the truth is that the only way to seriously oppose the movement of today is to also oppose the movement of yesterday. This means that the only legitimate way to oppose things like child drag queens is to also oppose the legalization of same-sex marriage and the very normalization of this stuff in society to begin with. Why? Because allowing one thing opens the door for you to allow the other. We're going to break that all down in today's video, but first, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you are new. And if you don't, that's kind of gay. It's so true, not gonna lie. All right, well anyways, beginning today's video, let us establish that the slippery slope is not a fallacy. And if you can't see that by now, you're frankly a fool. But with that said, let us walk through the specific ways in which today's rainbow people movement actually became so radical. Well, the truth is that the stuff you see today does not come from nowhere. It foundationally stems from the removing of an objective moral standard around sexuality that long predates Drag Queen Story Hour. And you see, historically in the West, the cultural norms regarding sex and everything else came from Christianity. We used to be a Christian civilization, believe it or not. Now, whether or not you agree with it, the Bible does provide an objective and consistent moral standard when it comes to sexuality and relationships. Marriage was seen as a serious lifelong covenant between a man and a woman, and sex was reserved for the confines of that marriage. That used to be the moral norm of the West. Now, did everyone follow this standard? Of course not. But the point is that it existed as a clearly defined cultural norm. It was broadly accepted by society. Even if people were hypocrites, they still understood what was correct and what the ideal was. And that standard was objective. Marriage is a specific thing, man and woman are clearly defined, and that's the way society used to be dictated. Well, in the 1960s, America began to abandon the objective moral standards of Christianity in favor of the subjective moral standards of liberalism. In the 1960s came the sexual revolution, which was really a combination of movements around feminism, atheism, LGBT, and abortion that really all had the same single purpose: removing that objective moral standard around sex. The liberals suggested that sex can really be something that you do whenever you want. Do it when you feel like it, do it when you feel ready personally. Hey, you're horny? You think that woman is attractive? Hey, why not? Go ahead, go do it, go be yourself. And the same became true of relationships. Hey, the Bible, that's outdated and dogmatic. Date whoever you want, marry whoever you want, be happy and do you. And that's the central theme of the sexual revolution. Reject God, reject tradition, reject morality and standards. You're in control, so you go do whatever you feel like. Live and let live. A lot of conservatives today also subscribe to this thinking, by the way, which is very bad. We need to fix that. But initially, a lot of people just kind of thought that this wouldn't be too bad. After all, the whole sex before marriage thing is kind of dogmatic. Let's just let people have a little bit of fun and let off some steam. I think it'll be fine. What's the worst that can happen, right? Well, here's the problem. The moment that you abandon objective moral standards, things will slowly slide off the cliff. The less that you enforce morality, the less moral that people will become. When you abandon order and standards, what you will inevitably arrive at is sexual anarchy. And this is to say that the moment you allow people to just start deciding these things for themselves, things will get increasingly more insane. That is an inevitability. People will begin to say, well, if it's really up to me and we've already established that I can do this and that, then why can't I also do this and this? And because man is fallen, because man is carnal and self-destructive, the crazy stuff that human beings will come up with will become increasingly more insane because that is in our nature. It just keeps pushing and pushing. And it, of course, doesn't help that our brains are so strongly wired towards sex. When you take that and liberate that without some type of check on that carnal sexual instinct, by simply telling people to go with whatever their heart and, their other body parts desire, what do you think is going to happen? Well, you see the results of that if you are, skeptical. What initially started as a few high school kids and college kids just having a little bit of fun inevitably becomes OnlyFans and 300 genders and all the other stuff we have today. And that will happen every single time you abandon objective moral standards and let the cat out of the bag. This is what happens when you reject God and unleash our natural instincts towards self-destruction. It's not good. Now, on the LGBT stuff, this is to say that everything you are seeing now is the byproduct of declaring that love is love. Because if love is love, then why can't people also love children or multiple people at once or whatever the heck this is, right? This is what happens when you say that relationships are whatever you want them to be and marriage is a subjective secular institution. So I say all of this fully understanding that most Americans are in the middle on this stuff. They really don't think that waiting for marriage is necessary, but also they kind of think that you should lose your virginity at a reasonable age when you feel like you are ready, don't go too crazy. They also probably think that the alphabet people can generally do whatever they want, but it shouldn't be exposed to children. These are the average opinions of most Americans, quite frankly. But the issue is that there is no such thing as middle ground. You are dealing with two irreconcilable parties here, and one has to win. Either traditional Christian America wins, or these people win. So really, you have to pick a side. And the truth is that if you are against pedophilia and drag queen story hour, you need to oppose the sexual revolution as a whole. Because again, the moment that sexuality becomes a matter of subjectivity, drag queen story hour is bound to happen. So there you go. I think you guys can assume that there's a lot more on this topic that I would like to say. I do actually have an old members video on it, but YouTube and whatnot. So I'll really leave my takes on this issue at that and let kind of your own intuitions, fill in the rest. But there it is, folks. The goal of this movement, let's understand this. The goal of this movement, frankly, has always been the same. And even to the extent to which people back then maybe weren't thinking of it, the truth is the destination was always the same. And so the solution to all of that is not to say, well, I'm willing to go back 5 years and in 5 years from now, just let it be the exact same. No, the solution is simply to oppose the entire movement as a whole in its entirety. So, okay, folks, with that said, thank you very much for watching, everyone. It is good to be back to consistent content. It was a crazy month of May between visiting home and the New York event and all that, but I will probably be live streaming tomorrow night at 9, so we're back to streaming, so remember that, and it's going to be very epic. It's so good to be back. Okay. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. God bless. Be sure to check out the merch, and yeah, see you guys later.
Americanism, not globalism. will be our credo as long